And a good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining for this Tropics After Dark. Of course, we're still tracking a couple of things out there in the tropics. We have Fred. We also have Grace way out there as well, which we'll touch on in just a little while. This Tropics After Dark is brought to you by Malone Roofing Services. As always, we do appreciate our sponsors and our partners during the hurricane season. Malone has been with us for a couple of years now. How you doing, Heather? Good to see you on here. Nikki as well. Melodia, Candace, Jordan, thanks for joining tonight. Good to see y'all on here. Of course, there's a lot to talk about. This is, of course, the remnants of Fred still. We're not looking at a tropical depression or a storm anymore currently. The National Hurricane Center says that they, went in there and they're just not finding anything currently as far as anything that would support bringing this back up to a tropical storm or a depression currently. So what we still have are just, like I said, remnants and just a little bit of convection there bubbling up a little bit, but it has not gotten its act back together. You remember yesterday I was talking about it takes a little while, like right when the storm gets back over water, it doesn't just mean that automatically, instantly it's going to be back up to, storm status. It takes a little while, and sometimes it never even happens. So what we're looking at right now is a storm that has really never been very organized the entire time. And that's why the models have been struggling with it. We're seeing models that have been going west. We're seeing things shifting back east. And, we might have locked in somewhat now. Remember, like that Florida-Alabama border is looking more and more like maybe that's where this thing will end up. But, this thing could still go a little bit more east. It could go a little bit more west. I think the important part right now is that currently on the satellite, we're not seeing anything very strong. Like if this was looking really impressive right now and was starting to get its act together, I'd be a lot more nervous. But currently, it's just not showing that on the satellite. And it's going to be dealing with some wind shear maybe the entire way close, as it makes its way to the north. So I'm not really seeing anything that tells me this thing is going to explode in intensity. It could gradually intensify as it makes its way to the north. Maybe up to where they're putting it. I think they're putting it at what are they saying now? They're forecasting only 50 miles per hour. But as always, like I always say, could be a little weaker, could be a little stronger. Is it maybe going to be 60 or 70? That remains to be seen. But right now, it's not looking very impressive, and it still has a long way to go to even get to that point. So that's a look at Fred currently, and here's a look at another angle. This kind of gives you the water vapor looking for dry air and looking for the moist air, and what we're seeing here right here is a little bit of spin here, right? That's that upper low I've been talking about for the last couple of days. And that's forecast to kind of weaken a little bit and maybe even pull up to the north, and that may help lessen the shear on this system a bit. Because right now, currently, it's been causing this type of shear, from the southwest as it spins. So you see some of these storms are getting blown off in that direction. But Fred is generally in this vicinity. It's hard to really tell where a center is. National Hurricane Center is plotting it. Where are they plotting it right now? Let's see. They're plotting it like over here. Like the northwest tip of Cuba. As we go back and look at where they have it, they have it somewhere around like here is where they have the center. So looking at the satellite, it's a very broad rotation. You can see some sort of spin going on, but again, not overly anxious right now at what I'm seeing on the current satellite picture. So here's the current cone. This is the latest 10 p.m. cone on the on Fred, remnants currently still. And we'll talk about Grace in just a little while, but let's cover Fred first. And, this is the newest track. It may have nudged back to the east a little bit. This is kind of what we see. Not huge, drastic shifts, but we're looking at a line right through almost Mobile now. And now they have it at a 50 mile per hour storm. This is August 16th. So what is that? Is that Monday? Monday at 7 p.m. So remember, like I was saying, because the thing didn't get its act together, it's kind of just been hanging around there. The timing has been delayed a little bit. So originally it was Sunday evening, now it's Monday evening. But here's the important thing to stress with this, and this is the important thing to stress with this storm, is the way it looks right now. It's very disorganized. Coming back here, look, if the National Hurricane Center has the center somewhere around here, look at where all this stuff is, right? It's to the east and the north of the system. If this thing deals with shear the entire way up, then if you're west of the storm, this has been the story a lot of times. If you're west of the storm, you're going to be in good shape. If you're east of it, you're going to deal with some mess and some impact from this. So, folks over there on the, like I've been mentioning all along the Emerald Coast, all this area here on these beautiful beaches here, if the storm does take a center track somewhere like this, that's going to put you all on the side with a lot of junk and a lot of rain and, just some nasty weather to deal with. Okay, so folks that are especially east of the center and even displaced, maybe even well to the east of the center, don't think that you're, just because you're not in that direct line, that you're not going to see impacts from this. This may be the case where the center is, you'll have maybe some winds around the center, but east and north, really east of it is where you're going to see a lot of the impacts, from this thing. So, more so than other storms. And this is kind of what I'm talking about here. Let me show you here. This is a look at the relative humidity, and this kind of just shows you the dry air versus the damp or the moist air. I know a lot of folks don't like the word moist, so they told me use damp. Okay, so the damp air is the green. And pushing this forward here, you can kind of tell. So here comes Fred, and look at that. You see that dry air wrapping in right there? So it's possible we do have some dry air affecting this as it gets closer to the coastline. But what that means is, so as it approaches the coast, notice the west side, a lot of dry air, and really all up here, right? Not much happening, but you see these darker green colors on the eastern side of it? That tells me that moisture tap is going to be coming into the east more so than the western portion of it. So if you're in the west, I think you're in good shape. If you're on the east or right around that center, that's where we're going to see, some impacts from this. Is it going to be devastating? No, it's not going to be devastating catastrophic impacts, but we're going to see some impacts from it. So expect a chance to see those rain bands coming up, and we see this with several of these storms that are just like this one. I don't remember the one earlier this season because I forget things sometimes, but there was one earlier in the season that set up. It wasn't Elsa. I think it was the one before that. And it was kind of the same as this, where a lot of the storm was east. And until we got to the live, when it was actually making landfall, it was hard to tell where those bands were going to set up. And, it set up, it was around Slidell, Gulfport, and maybe some areas a little bit east of Gulfport as well. But they caused some flooding issues, and I'm just having trouble remembering which storm it was earlier in the season. If anybody remembers, just remind me, because I'm forgetting what the storm was. But it was earlier in the season. So what I'm saying is that it's going to be hard to tell where the worst of the rain bands could set up, but we could see that issue where we get those bands set up and cause too much, rain, and we could see maybe some flash flooding potential there. This is just one. Was it? Yeah, Tanya, you're right. It was Claudette. Thank you for that. Thank you for that reminder. It was Claudette earlier in the season. Yep, that was the one. Yeah, that was the one that wasn't a storm, and then it ended up being named a storm. It was all that weird stuff happening with it, but it caused some flooding. But yeah, I appreciate your reminding me there. I just did not remember the name. Okay, so let's move this forward here. So this is the H-Wharf model, and again, this may not be the exact track, but I just want to show you guys what we could be looking at as far as maybe what the radar could look like when we get close to landfall. Now, if this is a low, just to kind of get your bearings and what's going on here, this is Mobile here. This is, what is all this junk on here? This is Mobile area. This is Pensacola over here. So just to kind of show you where we're at. The point I want to show you is on the west side of what we could be looking at, there's not much over here, right? Just a little bit of light rainfall there. But notice the east and, some of the mess over here, right? These heavier rain bands around the center and then stretching out over the panhandle. And then as we go toward landfall, yeah, you see in that potential there, right? So even if the center is here, notice around the center there's not much happening, but you have a lot of this junk here displaced to the north and east of the center. So that is what we could be seeing as we go into landfall here. So remember where the center is going to be, but east of it is could be where a lot of the impacts take place. And maybe, just maybe, we could see some spots that get too much rainfall and we have the flash flooding issues. That's always a possibility with these messy type tropical systems that make landfall. So something to keep in mind there. I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I'm just saying that with this storm, maybe the winds won't be the biggest issue, but the potential to see some rainfall in some areas. So keep that in mind, moving forward. So going back to the track, if you do get a landfall around here, if it does, look, and this could shift still, right? This is certainly not set, because like I told y'all yesterday, we could see a center reform. Where's the center going to reform? Is it going to reform a little bit more east? Well, in that case, we'll have to shift this track back to the east. Is it a little more west? Maybe so. Maybe it goes back west a little bit. But right now, this is the best estimate Don't be shocked if this thing does shift more east, maybe, or maybe a little bit more west. I don't know at this point. We'll have to just see where that center forms tomorrow, but we could still see some subtle movements with this track moving forward. But the point I wanted to stress to you is that if this is where the center does happen to come, and you get something around here, well, remember, you're going to have a lot of that mess over here in this area. So all these areas along the Florida Panhandle, and that looks like a jellyfish. Unintentional, but this does look like a jellyfish. Those areas along the Emerald Coast there will get some of the rainfall pushing in some of those bands, and some water rise as well on the onshore portion of the storm. So right now they're forecasting a 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm. Could it get up to that? Certainly could. Could it get a little higher? Certainly could. Could it be lower? Absolutely. As long as this thing looks like, doesn't look very impressive on satellite, it's going to take a little while for this thing to, recover a bit. So something to watch for as we move forward with this. So that's really what we're looking at with Fred. Timing, again, this is 7 p.m. on Monday. Landfall, this is 7 a.m. on Tuesday. So between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m., so probably midnight? 1 o'clock maybe. Late Monday night now is the timing. And we could still see some subtle shifts in this moving forward. So that's really the key. A couple of things to show here. This is kind of what I just kind of explained, but showing in some graphical format here. The rainfall estimates, right? We know where the center is forecast to come in, somewhere around here right now, right? Mobile. I can't see most of that on the screen, but you get the idea. With the heavier rainfall and the bulk of the stuff happening over here on the Florida Panhandle, stretching far to the east through Panama City, right? These orange areas are 6 to 10 inches of rainfall. Those little red, you see a little circle right there, that's anywhere from 10 to 15 inches of rainfall. So the point is that as this thing moves to the north, we could have some decent rainfall falling, and there could be isolated pockets that are 10 to 15 inches of rain. So it's very possible we do see some flooding issues. I hope that's not the case. But a lot of times with these tropical systems, we do see one area that gets too much rainfall. It's just impossible to say where that might happen currently, because the state of Fred right now is just not very good. It's not very impressive. So it's hard to really say where that's going to actually happen. But I just want to give you guys the potential of what could happen as we move forward. These were the models, by the way, that the National Hurricane Center used. And it's interesting because the other night we were talking about the National Hurricane Center using the cone, and they had the cone more east. A lot of the models were west, but they kept the cone east. Now tonight, if we put the active models up, notice that some of the models have shifted back to the east, but their cone is actually west of where the models are. So interesting there, and that's why I was kind of telling you we could see the potential for a shift back to the east tomorrow, or overnight tonight. So yeah, that's interesting. So the models did trend a little bit more to the east tonight. Maybe the center, maybe they found the center to be a little more north and east of where they originally thought. But with an erratic center like this, that happens, and continue to see that happen because this system is not very well developed, and it is very inconsistent. So that's the latest on Fred. Fred will be something we'll watch for the next 48 hours until this thing makes landfall. And then behind it, we have Grace. And so Tropical Storm Grace out there, there it is. Moving. It looks like whoosh, right? Look at this thing. And it has those black and pinks and whites, so it shows some pretty significant thunderstorms happening in Grace right now, and that's moving past the Leeward Islands. It's moving very quickly right now, and here's the Leeward Islands right here. Here's Puerto Rico, and it could actually move very close to where Fred did across Hispaniola, and that could disrupt it again. So something to watch for with Grace. Now notice here, as we go forward, I want to show you here what could happen and a couple of scenarios here. So as we push this forward, here goes Fred right here, right? You have this high that always sits around this area and usually just funnels storms right back, right into the Gulf. It's a pretty famous high, very, very popular high pressure that we talk about all the time in hurricane season. That's what Fred's riding around currently, and so there Fred goes. And it's the same high. It's going to be pushing Grace this way. Now, what could happen as we go, so Fred goes up here. Now, look what happens here. And this has the potential. Look how deep that high builds now above it. So is this what we see happen where this high builds in above Grace? And some models indicate that Grace continues this way and just goes straight into Texas and follows that low-level flow. That's kind of what the weaker models of Grace are indicating now. That a couple of stronger models, as I show you some of the model tracks, take it a little bit more to the north, where it wouldn't just be following the low level flow, but some upper level pull could be pulling it a little bit more to the north. So it's split again with Grace, right? So what we've seen, though, with that high building strong around it, is that may take the escape route. Like originally it looked like it might hook, and I know a lot of you are excited about that, but right now with that high building and above it, that escape hatch out to sea, harmless out to sea, might be diminishing, right? And that's not good. You know, we'd love these things to just hook out to sea and not come into the Gulf, but right now, this one does look like high pressure is going to build around it right here, and it's going to push it to the west. Now, the only thing to look at now is that if Grace does go over Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, and straight over Cuba, that's going to tear the storm apart, and it's not going to be able to strengthen as it goes through what we call the tropical graveyard here. These things disrupt these storms big time. So the thing is where does this go? You know, does it go a little bit north and come north here? Does it go south like some of these models are indicating and come back this way? The majority are right over the islands, and so that's going to disrupt the storm big time as it moves to the west. Can it get into the Gulf after that? Potentially, and that's what the National Hurricane Center is saying that is going to do. Now, at this point with this, you know, they have to go out with a 5-day forecast here, but I mean, at this point, you really don't even have to. I mean, it's hard to even imagine that we can even look at that part right now because of where it's about to go, right? I mean, it's going to go over these islands, and this could disrupt this thing big time. We could be dealing with the remnants of Grace once it gets to this point, right? So if it does survive, then yeah, this thing could be getting into the Gulf of Mexico by the time we get into Thursday, you know, afternoon and evening. If it survives the trek here, that's a big if. And you know, so we'll go with the National Hurricane Center, and we could have a storm here in the you know, in the Gulf. And there's going to be two camps here where, you know, we could see this thing head straight over here into Texas, or we could see this thing come north and maybe start to hook, you know, in some way. It's hard to tell at this point which one's going to happen. But the key is with Grace is, you know, there's certainly the potential that it does get into the Gulf of Mexico, but that wouldn't be until this upcoming Thursday. So as far as where's it going to go, how strong is it going to be, not even entertaining that right now because it's got too much to happen in the next 72 hours or so, right? A lot of stuff happening. So folks in Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic and Hispaniola area and going into Cuba here, these obviously are going to be affected by Grace a bit pretty soon. And then folks in the Gulf possibly going into next weekend. So this weekend, Fred, we're looking at, and next weekend could be Grace, but a lot of obstacles ahead of this system to deal with. National Hurricane Center only puts this at what they put Grace. Thank you, Patricia, appreciate that. They put Grace at 50 miles per hour. They don't forecast it any stronger right now at 50 miles per hour. So that last point there on Thursday, they have it at 50 miles per hour. So, but that is subject to change. Big time subject to change. This thing's got plenty of stuff, plenty of obstacles to move through. So, yeah, Grace is you know, we're going to see these cones every day. You're going to see them shared a lot on social media. Every single cone, every single model run. I'm not going to share every single model run on the page because that doesn't do anything for anyone. Like, especially this far out. You know, when you get like Fred, it's good to see some of the trends that happen, but this far out, there's going to be so many changes happening. So, yeah, I'm not going to be sharing every single model run out there. That's going to be exhausting for everyone, me and you, because you're going to see so many changes. You'll be like, oh my God, this thing is a roller coaster ride. So, you know, the most important part for Grace is obviously the next couple of days is going to be going through the island chain. We're going to see what this thing looks like. And then when we get into Wednesday and Thursday, then the models become a little bit more important. What do they look like at that point? What does the upper level air look like? What does the storm look like, most importantly? Is it going to be remnants at that point? So a long way to go with you know, with both of these systems actually. I'm actually thankful right now that, you know, we are close to, or actually in mid-August now, and Fred doesn't look impressive. I mean, this could look much worse. But it doesn't, and hopefully it stays that way as we go through. And even Grace, you know, I mean, it has some convection with it, but this thing is hauling very quickly here to the west. So it's not really, yes, it has convection, but it still doesn't have that tropical look. I mean, it just looks like a big blob of moisture heading to the west. So yeah, so something to watch for. Yeah, Alberto, it's way too far at this point. I mean, to know which part of Texas. I mean, it's either gonna go west, like straight west, or have some curve to it. But I got to tell you right now, it's really not even worth speculating what could happen when it goes into the if it even makes it to the Gulf of Mexico. So too much to happen before then, really. Let's see here. How you doing, Melissa? Good to see you on here. Patricia, thank you again. Yeah, Stan, I just talked about Grace. Let's see. Terry says I live 25 minutes from Mobile. Yep, we hope it doesn't get bad. Flip a coin, Carly says. Let's see. Whose idea was the name Grace? JJ says, did I say Pensacola or did I say Pensacola? You did say Pensacola, actually, the other night. Yep, Tanya got named on land. I think you were talking about Claudette. Got named on land. I hadn't seen that before happen. That was weird. All right, so that is the latest, and on Fred. This is the let's go to their official cone. There it is. Shifted maybe slightly to the east since the last one, but yeah, we're looking at a landfall between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. Tuesday, so late night Monday. Right now, somewhere around this area looks like the most likely area that we're going to see a landfall from this. But like I stressed before, if you're east of this, all these areas over here, you could get the bulk of the action from this storm if it does end up here, because this thing could be disorganized and very messy and displaced off to the east. So keep that in mind. Just because you're not in the center here, all these areas over here, you're going to get some impacts from this, and you could get a lot of rainfall, and there could be some isolated tornadoes in those bands, and of course a little bit of water rise with the push onshore push. How you doing, Karen? Thanks for joining tonight. So is Louisiana out of the question? Kaylin says it's looking good for Louisiana. It's going to be tough because if you're on the west side of the system, you're looking very good. So for this thing to go as far west for Louisiana to be in any kind of, I don't want to say danger, but it would have to take a massive shift, and I don't see that happening. So yeah, Louisiana's looking good from this one. Mississippi's even looking good from this because it's going to be hard for Mississippi to end up on the east side. So Mobile, Florida Panhandle to the east. Yeah, this is the one you got to keep watching, and we just hope that it doesn't do anything funny. Hopefully that shear keeps it in, at bay, and some dry air maybe gets in and disrupts it a little bit. So right now it's not looking impressive on satellite, and we hope that continues. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. Remember, it wasn't really supposed to become a tropical storm again until tomorrow. There's certainly a broad circulation with it in here somewhere, but as far as where the center is, I don't know. National Hurricane Center says they know. I don't know if they do either. It's not very well defined, and that's why it's not officially a tropical storm again yet. So I'll continue watching it. We'll hope for the best with this. Folks along the Gulf Coast, keep watching it. I wouldn't panic, obviously. Doesn't look like it's going to be a horrible storm. Could it get up to a mid-range tropical storm, 50 to 70 miles per hour? It certainly could. Cat 1 hurricane, oh man, I hate to ever take it off the table, but man, this one would be a long shot, right, to get to that point. So hopefully that does not happen, and it would have to happen quickly, but this is not happening quickly with this one. This still has a long way to go to even get back to a tropical depression right now. So still just looking at the remnants currently. All right, so that's the latest on Fred. Again, landfall looks like late Monday evening into early on Tuesday. Thank you guys for watching tonight. Appreciate y'all for joining. Appreciate Malone Roofing for sponsoring these videos. Continue to stay with the page. I'll post some models as we go into later on tonight. See if anything changes. Let's take a quick look here at the GFS and see if we can get that late run. This is the late run. Let's see if we got anything new here. Not really. Same kind of thing, right? A little along the Florida Panhandle. Yep, late Monday evening. So not much change there. A little bit more east, the GFS is saying, than where their track is, but you get the point. Anywhere from Mobile over to the Florida Panhandle looks like where this thing is going to end up making landfall. But notice where that dark green is. That's on the eastern side of this. So lots of rainfall coming up. All right, y'all. Thank you, and stay with the page. I'll keep y'all updated, and share this video if you'd like to. Otherwise, I will see y'all later. You're welcome, Karen, Deborah, and Pam. Good night, everyone.